Hi, guys. I wanted to jump on here because I had a little bit of inspiration that came to me earlier, and I just thought this is something that might help people who ever need to sort of stumble across this information to navigate their paths forward a little bit more easily than maybe they are doing so right now. And for people who are a little bit stuck in a rut on their path, because we all get to that place sometimes in life. So the message that I'm really wanting to share in this um, recording is to take the leap of faith if that's something that you're feeling called to do in certain areas of your life. Now, that could be any area of your life. You know, it could be in the work that you're doing, it could be in sort of writing a book. You know, you've had all these ideas and this inspiration in your head about, oh my goodness, like I could put this onto paper and maybe I've got a bestseller there. Or it could be, some sort of changes that you wanted to make on your path towards fulfillment in regards to your health. It could be anything. Whatever it is for you, if there is this niggling sort of feeling that you heading in the wrong right, let me start that again. If it feels that you're heading in the wrong direction, and something is almost feeling like an internal GPS that's like trying to re-navigate you down a different path, I hope this message sort of comes across as a bit of comfort and a bit of confidence for you to take that leap of faith. But also, I'm going to give you some little tips on how you can do that, because when we're trying to step outside of our comfort zone, and I always say this to people who book in for readings with me, that I find it so ironic that we call it a comfort zone, because our comfort zone is never comfortable. Well, at least for me, it's never been comfortable. The reason it's a comfort zone is because it cycles of behavior that we are so used to acting on that they become comfortable to us. It doesn't necessarily mean that we enjoy doing them. It just means that we've continued to do them for such a period of time that it's just second nature. So that to go against that, it just feels completely alien to us. And another reason that I wanted to share this message is because I've seen it in so many readings that I'll have people sort of book in with me. And I can see that they're stuck in these certain cycles of behavior and have been for such a long time, and desperately wanting to get out of them and almost looking outside of themselves for the answers onto how to do that. And having that sort of apprehension and that anxiety that comes with walking down the path sort of less traveled. And so this is another reason why I wanted to come across with this message today. So let's get into it. I'm going to use a real life example, and that is something in my own life at the moment. And it's something that I'm quite candid in talking about, because I always think if there's certain things about my own experiences that I can talk about that might help others, then I'm happy to do so. I've gone down so many paths of healing over the years that it's come to the point that I'd rather share my sort of healing journey, regardless of how sort of clunky it might have been or how painful it might have been at the time, because I've come through the other side and it's just another part of me. It's not something that defines me anymore. It's just an experience I've had that's given me the opportunity to have so much growth. And for that, I'm grateful. So one of the main things that I've experienced through my life, and it probably started initially around the age of, 7 or 8 years old, but really sort of took full force when I was around the age of 13, is that I was diagnosed with anorexia. So for anybody who doesn't know what anorexia is, it's a genetic condition that ultimately, for people who have the genetic conditioning for anorexia, if we find ourselves in a situation where we fall below our weight that our body wants us to be, and that could be for any reason. It could be because we go on a sort of crash diet for whatever reason. It could be because we've fallen ill. Whatever makes us sort of lose weight below the threshold of what our body is happy being at. It's really unusual for those who haven't experienced it. But the best way I can describe it, it's almost like a switch gets flicked in your brain. and it turns on this sort of conditioned behavior. A lady called Shan Geisinger was someone I stumbled across a couple of years ago, and is probably the best sort of way that has been put into words really about what happens with someone who has anorexia. And she termed it adapted to flee famine. And so it's almost a situation where we fall below this threshold and our brain automatically tells our body, oh, we're in a famine. So when we're in a famine, what do? We need to migrate to wherever there's abundant food. Now, obviously, in this environment, as we've evolved, it doesn't serve us. There is obviously more than enough food in the environment, but so we don't have this switch off mechanism, but we do act on certain behaviors as an animal may do so if they were migrating from a place where there isn't much food to try and get to a place of abundant food. And for me, what that would look like is that I would feel like I would want to consume as little food as possible and move as much as possible, very much like an animal in migration. And so for me, this is something that has been a continuous cycle in my life for 27 years. So it's become very, very entrenched behavior in me. And it's something obviously that doesn't serve me, because it's something that I have kept going around and around and around for a number of years. And it's made me miss out on some really prominent points in my life. And it's really withheld me from experiencing life to the fullest. And not only that, but it's caused a huge amount of damage to my body in the long term. And I've had a lot of sort of detrimental effects as a result of that. It's got to the point in my life now, though, that I have done so much healing and I've gained so much knowledge about the disorder that I am in an environment now, not only in the environment that I'm in terms of the 3D material world, but an environment within my own body and in my own mind that I've healed and worked on healing, that it doesn't serve that anymore. And so over the sort of last 5 years or so, I've tried to sort of lean into recovering completely, fully. And I've said it a couple of times, and it never really got anywhere. And that's because I was at the point that there was still certain cycles of behavior in my environment that kind of enabled my anorexia to keep sort of consistent as it was. However, sort of leaning into the path that I'm on now, it doesn't serve me. It's got no place, it's got no purpose, and it's actually holding me back from living life to the fullest and really sort of jumping up into my higher path in this lifetime. When we come here on our individual journeys, we have a lower path in this lifetime that we can come into, and that's a path that we sort of walk down and we make the wrong choices and connect with the wrong individuals, and they all have their sort of growth aspects and their experience aspects where we can learn and grow and overcome sort of certain cycles of behavior. And then we also have our higher path in the lifetime, and that's the highest path of our destiny that we actually ultimately come here to live. And that's the sort of path that we are always being navigated towards by our gut instinct and by our heart. But a lot of us sort of hesitate to sort of lean into it, and I'll go into why in a minute. So ultimately, I'd recently found that I had certain things crop up in my environment that had put me into that sort of behavioral pattern of my anorexia cropping back up again. And again, what that looks like for me is that I would start restricting a little bit more in terms of what I would eat, and maybe start sort of feeling like I wanted to be a bit more active. It was really interesting though, because this time I feel like it actually came up more so as an acknowledgement of how much I'd grown, because I was very quick to act upon an awareness of these cycles of behavior that were showing up again. Normally, they would happen if I was looking outside of myself for validation from others, or love or support or kindness, or a feeling of worthiness from others. So normally, I'm not ashamed to admit it, that I might fall into those behaviors because I was looking for someone outside to say, you're good enough, you're worthy enough, and having that sort of desire to feel seen as a result of that. This time, however, when I fell back into those behaviors, it was nothing to do with that, because I've got to the point now that I only really seek that from within myself. And so it was really interesting because it was almost like I had an outside perspective of my behavior and I could see it happening. And this time around, rather than needing another individual to point it out and say, what are you doing? You're going backwards again. It was something I became very quickly aware of myself. And I've re-navigated myself back onto that path of recovering fully. And this is something that I'm holding myself accountable for. And I've got a real hope within my heart and being that this is the time that I'm actually going to do it, because everything's possible. When it comes to healing, we can completely shift that and completely heal, especially when it's more so to do with a mental aspect of things and behavioral patterns. And again, I'm going to talk you through how and why this happens and what we can do to overcome it. So that's where I am on my own journey at the moment, in terms of my healing and what I'm focusing on right now. And so you may notice some sort of like shifts and changes within me as I sort of go through this healing process. And it's something that I was so hesitant to lean into towards before. In terms of, whether my body would change and whether my sort of facial structure would change, or just silly little things like that. They would be things that would sort of really navigate me off that sort of healing journey in the past. But now I've just got to the point that I'm like so aware of my worthiness. And actually, it's so much more important for me to heal fully and not care about what that looks like on the physical sense of things. Because to me, being fully recovered, if that comes as a result of the actions that I'm taking, that means more to me than really giving a damn what I look like from a 3D perspective. So how do we overcome these cycles of behavior? How do we step outside of our comfort zone? How do we take these leaps of faith? Well, I'll tell you, because it's exactly what I'm doing to overcome my cycles of behavior. When we are going down a certain path, and this is something I share with people in readings as well. When we sort of going down a certain path for such a long period of time, this is where the science comes in. What we're doing is within our brains. So in our brain, we've got the left-hand side of our brain, which is the logical side of our brain, our ego brain. But it's also the sort of we have sort of less evolved parts of our brain, which are this sort of lizard brain that likes to keep us sort of safe and small and almost that sort of fight or flight aspect. And then obviously we've got the right side of our brain, which is the creative, the more sort of aspect of our brain that sort of creates imagery and visualization. And you'll see a lot of people who will say, if you're artistic, you're working from the sort of right side of your brain, or if you're creative, you're working from the aspect of your brain. Today, I want to talk about the left side of your brain, which is that sort of logical aspect, the ego side of your brain, which keeps us in that safe, contained environment. That's its purpose. It wants to keep us safe. But sometimes it doesn't work to our detriment. Sometimes it works to our detriment in doing that. And so what happens is when we sort of act upon certain behavioral patterns for a short period of time or a long period of time, what we're doing is we are creating what they call neural pathways of behavior. And the more we act upon doing a certain thing, the more we inform our brain, this is the path that I walk down. This is safe. This is what we do. So, for example, in my situation, I have taught my brain to fear putting on weight, or to fear eating certain foods, or to fear sitting on my bum all day and not doing a workout. I've taught my brain to fear that, to think that it's the wrong action for me to take. And as a result of that, it has learned that it's not meant to do that behavior. And so automatically, if I try and navigate away from that by sort of saying to myself now, where I'm on this healing path, actually, we're going to walk down a different road today. We're actually going to eat that food today. We're actually going to sit on your bum today and not do any exercise. What automatically happens in the very, very early stages, and it could take a good sort of month or so to make it feel a little less anxious about taking the opposite action, is that you will get a knee-jerk reaction, because that is your ego saying, oh, but you've told us it's safe to go down this path and you're going down that path. And that is exactly what happens when we want to lean away from a path that we've been on for so long and want to lean towards taking a leap of faith into something completely new and outside of our comfort zone. And this is how you can overcome that. The way that we overcome that sort of knee-jerk reaction that we get when we lean away from the path that we've walked on for so long that isn't serving us, and we start navigating towards a path that our instincts are telling us to move towards, that our heart is telling us to move towards, is continuing to lean into it. The more we do that, the easier it gets, and it becomes the new norm. It becomes a new path that we walk down. And also, the more that we lean into our gut instincts and we lean into our heart, the more we trust in that, and we see the reality around us serving us and working with us more and more and more. And we start showing up for ourselves, and our body gets into this state of calm and relaxation and comfort, knowing that it's being listened to, knowing that it's being heard. And so if there is anything within you right now that is urging you or calling you to make a change in your life, and you feel that you want to make that change, just remember that if there's that knee-jerk reaction that you are getting as a result of leaning into that, it isn't because you're doing anything wrong. It is simply because you have trained your brain for such a long period of time to go down a certain path. And so all you need to do to lean into the path less traveled is to do exactly that, just to lean into it and take that leap of faith. And I hope this finds whoever needs to hear it today. And I hope as a result that you'll start acknowledging that by leaning into shifting our awareness and creating new pathways within our brain of behavior, we can change our life. And honestly, if you want to look into the science behind it a little bit more, it is fascinating. Just look up neural pathways and how they sort of build, and when we sort of do certain patterns of behavior. I'm pretty sure that Joe Dispenza talks about it as well. So have a look into him, because he's phenomenal when he sort of talks about the brain and its sort of mechanisms and what have you. But that's ultimately all it is. It's nothing to be sort of fearful of. It simply is that we've taught our brain to do a certain thing for a certain period of time, and our brain wants to keep us safe. But sometimes being safe means that we miss out on so much of our life. And that is something that I'm not willing to do anymore on my path. So I hope you're going to be here for me for my journey. I welcome you on board for it. I really hope that message helps you today and has found whoever needs to hear it. And like I said, if you're feeling that urge, then take that leap of faith. It's worth it. Lots of love. Bye.